Act 1. time did put it out of further question.
But how, my lord? Shall we resist it now?
It must be thought of. If it pass against us, we lose the better half of our possession. For all the temporal lands which men devout by testament have given to the Church, would they strip from us, being valued thus, as much as would maintain, to the king's honour, full 15 earls and 1,500 knights, 6,200 good esquires, and, to relief of lazars and weak age, of indigent faint souls past corporal toil, 100 almshouses right well supplied, and to the coffers of the king beside, £1,000 by the year. Thus runs the bill.
This would drink deep.
'Twould drink the cup and all.
But what prevents him?
The king is full of grace and fair regard,
And a true lover of the Holy Church.
the courses of his youth promised it not. The breath no sooner left his father's body, but that his wildness, mortified in him, seemed to die too. Yea, at that very moment, consideration, like an angel, came, and whipped the offending Adam out of him, leaving his body as a paradise, to envelop and contain celestial spirit. Never was such a sudden scholar made, never came reformation in a flood with such a heady currents, scouring faults, nor never hydra-headed wilfulness. So soon did lose his seat, and all at once, as in this king.
We are blessed in the chain.
Hear him, but reason in divinity, and all admiring with an inward wish, he would desire the king were made a prelate. Hear him debate of commonwealth affairs, he would say it hath been all in all his study. List his discourse of war, and you shall hear a fearful battle rendered you in music. Turn him to any cause of policy, the Gordian knot of it he will unloose, familiar as his garter. That, when he speaks the air, a chart of libertine is still, and the mute wonder lurketh in men's ears, steal his sweet and honeyed sentences, so that the art and practic part of life must be the mistress to this lyric, which is a wonder how his grace should glean it, since his addiction was to courses vain, his companies unlettered, rude, and shallow, his hours filled up with riots, banquets, sports, and never noted in him any study, any retirement, any suspicion from open haunts and popularity.
The strawberry grows underneath the nettle, and wholesome berries thrive and ripen best, neighboured by fruit of baser quality. And so the prince obscured his contemplation under the veil of wildness, which, no doubt, grew like the summer grass, fastest by night, unseen, yet crescive in his faculty.
It must be so, for miracles are ceased, and therefore we must needs admit the means how things are perfected.
But, my good lord, how now for mitigation of this bill urged by the commons? Doth his majesty incline to it, or no?
He seems indifferent, or rather swaying more upon our part than cherishing the exhibitors against us. For I have made an offer to his majesty upon our spiritual convocation, and in regard of causes now in hand, which I have opened to his grace at large, as touching France, to give a greater sum than ever at one time the clergy yet did his predecessors part withal.
How did this offer seem received, my lord?
With good acceptance of his majesty, save that there was not time enough to hear, as I perceived his grace would fain have done, the severals and unhidden passages of his true titles to some certain dukedoms, and generally the crown and seat of France derived from Edward, his great-grandfather.
What was the impediment that broke this off?
The French ambassador upon that instant craved audience, and the hour, I think, is come to give him hearing. Is it 4 o'clock?
It is.
Then go we in to know his embassy, which I could with a ready guess declare before the Frenchmen speak a word of it.
I'll wait upon you, and I long to hear it.
Exeunt. Scene 2. The same. The presence chamber. Enter King Henry V, Gloucester, Bedford, Exeter, Warwick, Westmoreland, and attendants.
Where is my gracious Lord of Canterbury?
Not here in presence.
Send for him, good uncle.
Shall we call in the ambassador, my liege?
Not yet, my cousin. We would be resolved, before we hear him, of some things of weight that task our thoughts concerning us and France.
Enter the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Bishop of Ely.
God and his angels guard your throne, and make you long become it.
Sure we thank you. My learned lord, we pray you to proceed and justly and religiously unfold why the law Salic that they have in France or should not bar us in our claim. And God forbid, my dear and faithful lord, that you should fashion, rest, or bow your reading, or nicely charge your understanding soul with opening titles miscreant, whose right suits not in native colours with the truth. For God doth know how many now in health shall drop their blood in approbation of what your reverence shall incite us to. Therefore take heed how you impawn our person, how you awake our sleeping sword of war. We charge you in the name of God take heed, for never two such kingdoms did contend without much fall of blood, whose guiltless drops are every one a woe, a sore complaint gainst him whose wrong gives edge unto the sword, that makes such waste in brief mortality. Under this conjuration speak, my lord, for we will hear, note, and believe in heart, that what you speak is in your conscience washed as pure as sin with baptism.
Then hear me, gracious sovereign, and you peers that owe yourselves your lives and services to this imperial throne. There is no bar to make against your highness' claim to France, but this, which they produce from Pharamond. In terram salicam mulieres ne succidant. No woman shall succeed in Salic land, which Salic land the French unjustly glows to be the realm of France, and Pharamond, the founder of this law and female bar. Yet their own authors faithfully affirm that the land Salic is in Germany, between the floods of Saale and of Elbe, where Charles the Great, having subdued the Saxons, there left behind and settled certain French, who, holding in disdain the German women or some dishonest manners of their life, established then this law, to wit, no female should be inheritrix in Salic land, which Salic, as I said, twixt Elbe and Saale, is at this day in Germany called Meissen. Then doth it well appear that Salic law was not devised for the realm of France, nor did the French possess the Salic land until 421 years after the defunction of King Pharamond, idly supposed the founder of this law, who died within the year of our redemption 426, and Charles the Great subdued the Saxons, and did seek the French beyond the river Saale. Find your bloody flag, look back into your mighty ancestors. Go, my dread lord, to your great-grandsire's tomb, from whom you claim, invoke his warlike spirit, and your great uncle
Scot, who will make road upon us with all advantages.
They of those marches, gracious sovereign, shall be a wall sufficient to defend our inland from the pilfering borderers.
We do not mean the coursing snatchers only, but fear the main intendment of the Scot, who hath been still a giddy neighbour to us. For you shall read that my great-grandfather never went with his forces into France, but that the Scot on his unfurnished kingdom came pouring, like the tide into a breach, with ample and brimfulness of his force, galling the gleaned land with hot assays, girding with grievous siege castles and towns, that England, being empty of defence, hath shook and trembled at the ill neighbourhood.
She hath been then more feared than harmed, my liege. For here are but exampled by herself, when all her chivalry hath been in France, and she a mourning widow of her nobles, she hath herself not only well defended, but taken and impounded as a stray the King of Scots, whom she did send to France, fill King Edward's fame with prisoner king, and make her chronicle as rich with praise as is the ooze and bottom of the sea, with sunken wreck and sunless treasuries.
But there's a saying, very old and true, if that you will France win, then with Scotland first begin. For once the eagle England being in prey, to her unguarded nest the weasel Scot comes sneaking, and so sucks her princely eggs, playing the mouse in the absence of the cat, to tear and havoc more than she can eat.
It follows, then, the cat must stay at home. Yet that is but a crushed necessity, since we have locks to safeguard necessaries, and pretty traps to catch the petty thieves. While that the armed hand doth fight abroad, the advised head defends itself at home. For government, though high and low and lower, put into parts doth keep in one consent, congreeing in a full and natural close, like music.
Therefore doth heaven divide the state of man in divers functions, setting endeavour in a continual motion, to which is fixed as a name or but obedience. For so work the honeybees, creatures that by a rule in nature teach the act of order to a peopled kingdom. They have a king and officers of sorts, where some like magistrates correct at home, others like merchants venture trade abroad, others like soldiers armed in their states make boot upon the summer's velvet buds, which pillage they with merry march bring home to the tent royal of their emperor, who, busied in his majesty, surveys the singing masons building roofs of gold, the civil citizens kneading up the honey, the poor mechanic porters crowding in their heavy burdens at his narrow gate, the sad-eyed justice with his surly hum, delivering ore to executors pale, the lazy yawning drone. I this infer, that many things, having full reference to one consent, may work contrariously, as many arrows loosed in several ways come to one mark, as many ways meet in one town, as many fresh streams meet in one salt sea, as many lines close in the dial centre, so may 1,000 actions once afoot end in one purpose, and be all well borne without defeat. Therefore to France, my liege, divide your happy England into 4, whereof take you 1/4 into France, and you withal shall make all Gallia shake. If we, with thrice such powers, left at home cannot defend our own doors from the dog, let us be worried, and our nation lose the name of hardiness and policy.
Call in the messengers sent from the Dauphin.
Exeunt some attendants.
Now are we well resolved, and by God's help, and yours, the noble sinews of our power, France being ours, we'll bend it to our oar, or break it all to pieces. Or there we'll sit, ruling in large and ample empery o'er France and all her almost kingly dukedoms, or lay these bones in an unworthy urn, tombless, with no remembrance over them. Either our history shall with full mouth speak freely of our acts, or else our grave, like Turkish mute, shall have a tongueless mouth, not worshipped with a waxen epitaph.
Enter ambassadors of France.
Now are we well prepared to know the pleasure of our fair cousin Dauphin, for we hear your greeting is from him, not from the king.
It please your majesty to give us leave freely to render what we have in charge. Or shall we sparingly show you far off the Dauphin's meaning and our embassy?
We are no tyrant, but a Christian king, unto whose grace our passion is as subject as are our wretches fettered in our prisons. Therefore, with frank and with uncurbed plainness, tell us the Dauphin's mind.
Thus, then, in few, your Highness, lately sending into France, did claim some certain dukedoms in the right of your great predecessor, King Edward III. In answer of which claim, the prince, our master, says that you savour too much of your youth, and bids you be advised. There's naught in France that can be with a nimble galliard one. You cannot revel into dukedoms there. He therefore sends you metre for your spirit, his tun of treasure, and, in lieu of this, desires you let the dukedoms that you claim hear no more of you. This the Dauphin speaks.
What treasure, uncle?
Tennis balls, my liege.
We are glad the Dauphin is so pleasant with us. His present and your pains we thank you for. When we have marched our rackets to these balls, we will in France, by God's grace, play a set shall strike his father's crown into the hazard. Tell him he hath made a match with such a wrangler that all the courts of France will be disturbed with chases. And we understand him well, how he comes o'er us with our wilder days, not measuring what use we made of them. We never valued this poor seat of England, and therefore, living hence, did give ourselves to barbarous license, as 'tis ever common that men are merriest when they are from home. But tell the Dauphin I will keep my state, be like a king, and show my